and welcome to the Intuitive Heart Healer podcast. My name is Valerie McLaughlin, and I am your host for this podcast today. I'm so grateful to have you all here with me, and I am looking forward to diving into this week's topic. And last week I talked about energy, and I said that I would come back and there was a couple of topics that I would bring forward, and one was talking about the psychic senses, but I want to talk to you about the psychic senses in the form of how I work with them when I do energy healing. And I thought it would be an interesting way to put things together for you all. And this is, when you listen to this, I want you to take what you feel is true to you and hold that with you, and anything else you just discard away. So, if something doesn't resonate with you, then don't take it as yours. I'm talking from my experience and experiences that I've had working with people and helping people kind of tune in and tap into their spiritual gifts, their psychic senses, their clairs, whatever it is that you wish to call it. In this episode, I'm referring to them as psychic senses. And I'm going to talk to you about how I work with the different psychic senses, how I perceive them through my lens, and give you some insight of, how it might relate to some other things like a regular life, and not just tapping in and talking to loved ones that passed or channeling and things like that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this podcast today. So I want to start with one of my strongest senses, and that is feeling. And when you work with energy, and we talked about energy last week, when you work with energy, in my experiences, feeling it has been my strongest psychic sense. It's called clairsentience is what it's called. And so right off the bat, when I started to get into this, I realized that I could hold crystals in my hand and feel their vibration. And so this feeling, which is clairsentient, clair feeling, is what it is. So it's not just about feeling emotions or feeling other people's emotions. To me, it's also about feeling the energy, actually feeling the vibration and being able to feel the vibration within somebody and feeling the energetic field of somebody. And I feel it with my energetic field. And a lot of times I feel it within my hands, because I use my hands a lot to work. Like I talked last week, we have the chakras, these circulars, kind of remind me of Iron Man when he has that circular thing and he shoots out from there. That's kind of like my vision of how I see these energy vortexes, and I use them to feel, but I just don't feel with my hands. I feel with my whole being, my whole energetic being. And you feel emotions too. So this clairsentience, the psychic sense of clear feeling, encompasses many things, and it's just not being emotions like being an empath. Yes, that is part of it, but it's also being able to feel the shifts in the different energy. And it does not have to be with an actual person. It can be feeling the different shifts in energy within somebody's body, within the separate organs of their body, because in my experience, each organ has a different frequency and a different energy, and when it's not quite right, it's a whole different frequency. That's how I feel it. But it's also about feeling the energy of an object, of a place, of a thing, feeling the shifts in the room. Like you might be standing in one spot and you move and you could feel a different energy. When I have entities or visitors, or however you want to put it, come in, even when I'm doing healing, sometimes they'll step forward, whether it's a goddess, an angel, what have you, or a loved one that passed. I can feel their energy enter first. That's like the first thing that I feel. And when I feel it, I can sense, is it a female or male energy? And then the other aspect that comes in is the claircognizance, the clear knowing, the psychic sense of clear knowing. And so it's kind of, I use them as a combination almost, because when I feel something, like let's say I feel a presence walk in while I'm doing a healing, and I feel the presence, and then all of a sudden I know it's an angel, or I know that it's a loved one, and I know it's a male, or if I know it's a female. Sometimes I don't get all those senses, sometimes I do. Depends on the clear channel, what's going on at that time. But the idea behind it, or the feeling behind it that I get, is I feel something, then I sense something, then I know. So to me, it's kind of all hand in hand. So like if I'm working with healing somebody's body, if I'm working distantly with them, and we could be maybe on Zoom, or even if it's in a room and I'm working on a group and I'm doing distance healing in that group, instead of going up and working on there, I can feel in my body where I'm working with that person. And then I could know that, you know, they're having issues with their stomach. And I might then know that this issue with their stomach could be emotional, or it could be attached to a food that they're eating. And so to me, those senses, the clairsentience and the claircognizance, the clear knowing and the clear feeling, for me, works hand in hand. And it also comes in this too, where you just know. So a lot of times when I go to work with somebody, I might know exactly when I connect with them where I'm going to start working. And I just know. My whole body goes, you go here. Like, you know to go here. And it also is this knowing of who I am going to ask to step forward. Like knowing, you know, knowing that I'm going to bring Kali forward because there's just this strong connection. I feel like, you know, I want to bring her forward in this healing. And so it also, when I'm working with energy healing and I'm working on somebody, and let's say I'm working on their right side lower, it's a female person, and let's say it's right around maybe their ovaries, somewhere around there. And I'm feeling this energy that is really still and stagnant, and maybe even some heat coming from that, which usually represents to me inflammation. Then something that might come up is this question that I know that I have to ask them. And if you've ever experienced a healing from me, a lot of times I do talk through my healings. They're not clear healings, and that's actually more of what I'm shifting more to, is this open dialogue within the healing. I will ask this question, and I might ask them, you know, at a young age, somewhere between this and this, did something happen to you? It may be more specific than that, but whatever it is, I just know that I have to ask this question, and this question comes to me, which brings in my next sense, which is the clairaudience. So I hear this question in my head, and then I know that I have to ask this question, and I know that this question is important to the person that I'm working with. So I'm hoping this like making some sense to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to email me about them at intuitivehearthealer@gmail.com. But so the clairaudience is really important in in the work that I do, and sometimes I will hear songs play over and over in my head, which is the clairaudient, over and over in your head. When you hear things that are not in your normal context, usually, that's how I'm going to put it, not in your normal context, these are messages that you're receiving. And most of the time it's in your head and it's in your own voice. Rarely do people hear things outside of them. I do hear things outside of them. A lot of times lately it's been happening in my sleep, where I will hear somebody talking to me like they're almost in the bed next to me, which used to freak me out but doesn't anymore. But most of the time you don't hear something outside of yourself. You usually hear it in your head. So these could be songs, and some songs I don't even know what they mean or what they are, so I will repeat it to my client because there might be a connection or make sense to them. Not everything's going to make sense to you when you receive this, especially if this information is not for you, it's for somebody else. It could be a message from a loved one that comes through that I am to relate to the person and I hear the words. Or it also could just be me knowing that I have to say these words to them. So these are different things. In meditation, a lot of the time when I meditate, I will have things that play in my head. And it's actually right before this podcast, I did a meditation, and in my meditation, the whole podcast played in my head before I sat here and I'm giving you this podcast. And it wasn't me thinking about the podcast and what I have to say. This was information that was just, I was just actually sitting there enjoying a nice hot bath, treating myself to some self-love and self-care. And as I did this, I just kind of zoned out, and this whole podcast just played in my head word for word. And it's probably not exactly what I heard in my head, but that is a message. That's a channeled message. That's your clairaudient. That is not me thinking about it, because there was no effort on myself whatsoever. So that is clairaudient. You can hear high-pitched noises and frequencies. I do that a lot too. I will hear when I'm sometimes in my own ear, or when I'm working on somebody, I might hear a frequency or something, and I will tune into that frequency. To me, it's either a message that will translate for me to tell the person, or it's a frequency that I have to tune into to send that frequency to the person, because that's what they need. And you can also have these things when you talk to animals or rocks, crystals, whatever it is. There is that communication. You ask the question, you hear an answer. You ask the question, you hear an answer. And then the other psychic sense, the other clair is clairvoyancy, which most people know about. And clairvoyancy is this clear seeing. This is actually one of the senses that I don't necessarily work with a lot, but I'm going to tell you how it kind of unfolds and how I use it in my healing. And I do see things sometimes, and I'm just going to go into it and explain it to you. So when we'll go back to, I'm working on this female client, drawn to work in the right, like, ovary. I feel the energy. I hear the question, and I know I have to ask the question. In that, I may be also getting other information of maybe what she looked like as a young child, but I don't necessarily see the young child. Or I could all of a sudden say maybe the color red comes to me, and I don't necessarily see the color red, but I will see, I will know that it's the color red, that it is associated to what I'm doing. So a lot of the times when I tell somebody I see something, it's not necessarily that I actually see it. It's more of me a knowing and a feeling, or even something that might have came that I translate it as seeing, because that's usually how it's easier to communicate with somebody. Like, I saw you as a young kid. It's a lot easier to say that than say, I know that you were at an age of this, you had this happen to you. It's just a little bit easier to say, I see it. But I do sometimes within people, actually, when I do healing, sometimes I will see outside of my mind's eye, where most times that's where we end up seeing in our mind's eye. But if I'm working on somebody, a lot of the times I will see something outside of me, like a person peeking in the window. If I'm working on somebody, I remember I had this client in the office I was using. It was a door with a window, and I'm working on her, and I look up and I see this younger man peeking in the window, and I looked and I kind of did a double take, and then almost as fast as he was there, he was gone. I knew in an instant that this was the person's son that was there with us during the healing. So I will sometimes see things outside of them ourselves. Sometimes I will see symbols. Symbols come to me quite often, and sometimes it is colors that I see in my mind's eye. When I meditate, a lot of times that's what it is colors or symbols, or like the outline of something. And then if I see the picture, it's an instant, like I know that that's it. And sometimes it's like, I'll say like I see like, I don't know, Bugs Bunny or something, but I won't actually see it. That's just what they're like telling me, is like, oh, this from Bugs Bunny or whatever. And that's kind of how it works for me. Even like in my healings, like if it's something that comes up, it could come through as a TV show or a cartoon, but for me, it's not visual. It's just like, they'll tell me about it, or I'll just know. And it's not so much, and then kind of, I just know like what colors and different things like that. If that makes any sense to anybody, I don't get necessarily a clear like picture, like I'm looking at a television and I can see exactly everything there. It's more about knowing that this is what I watched, or this is what I'm being shown, and this is what's in there, and that kind of thing. So I wanted to share with you because psychic senses for everybody comes through so differently, and how we see it. And there's nothing wrong with how you see it. That's how it is to you. And part of the reason is because we're also different, and we tap in differently, and we have different senses. So you can strengthen these, and I have over the years strengthened different aspects of them. And it's really easier if you really start with the ones that you come to you so clearly, to really nurture them, and then allow yourself to begin to tune in to the other senses. And some people in my life might disagree with me, because I do have a very high sense of hearing, and I call it my psychic hearing. And that is like hearing people's conversation. But to me, I feel like it's more of a knowing. So I can be in multiple conversations at once, or having a conversation and be listening to other conversations, but really engaged in this conversation. And then I'll turn around and I'll answer a question, or add to a story that's being told in this other conversation. And most of my life, it was like, oh, you can hear that. You heard that whole conversation. And part of it is yes, but part of it is no. Part of it is like psychically, I'm just kind of attuned to that. And then the answer comes because I know what you're talking about. And then I just answer the question. And that's how I see it. But a lot of times, like my sister say, well, you got this really great healing, this psychic healing, psychic hearing. But I've realized that it's not so much your actual ears that are hearing. When I realized that my grandma had this quality too, and because she could answer us when she was in a whole nother room and we could be whispering, and I realized that she had this psychic hearing, and that's just she was tuned in and knowing what we were talking about and just answered what we were talking about. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about how that happens. But the other psychic senses, and I don't know the clair names for these off the top of my head, but it's a clear sense of smell and a clear sense of taste. I've had the clear taste here and there where I might like taste a metallic taste in my mouth, or sometimes an alcohol, whether it's a red wine or whiskey or something like that. But I haven't really had, other than that, have that happen. The smell, though, I do get quite often. And sometimes it has happened when I was working on a client, whether I'm in person or working online distantly, where a smell will come in and I'll be like, wow, I just smelled cigarettes, or wow, I just smelled this perfume scent, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't ever remember smelling this, but this is what it smells like. And a lot of times it will relate to the person that I'm working on. But I also do had that happen to myself, where I might smell cigarettes, which I know who that is that usually comes through. And sometimes I might smell like peanut butter, or get a whiff of like my grandmom's sauce. And obviously she's not here to cook it, and I'm not cooking it, and it just kind of comes through. So you can also have those clear smellings, and sometimes it's not a nice smell. To be honest, sometimes it could be a smell that you're like, ooh, what is this? And to me, it's the first thing that popped in my head is tuna fish, because I don't like the smell of tuna fish. So it's not something that I have in my house. But, if I have that smell, it's like, ooh. But I don't have association with tuna fish either. But, sometimes it could be an off-putting smell that you have. But that is also a message coming to you. Just attune to them and listen to them. And maybe in another podcast, I will give you some tips on how to. I think I did that in a previous podcast, but since we're talking about energy and we're kind of regrouping and going back to some of the basics, I thought, I think maybe I'll put another podcast out about that. But let me talk to you about how this happens. So it's all energy, right? So everything is energy. So when we are a clear channel, we clear things up, we can begin to feel these a lot easier and connect a lot easier. So when you raise your vibration, because when you're connecting to like spirits, you got to really raise your vibration. I find when I connect to another person, I don't have to necessarily raise my vibration as much. But every time I do a healing on somebody, I'm just not connecting to that person. I am working and connecting to that person and any of their spirit guides, spirit animals, archangels, loved ones, and their higher self. If any of that wants to step forward to assist with the healing, then I will invite them into the space. So in that, I have to raise my vibration. And the higher I'm able to raise my vibration, the more easily it is to connect, because they are at a higher frequency. So if I can raise my frequency, they'll lower theirs a little bit, and then we can connect in this nice space. But we're all connected to one consciousness. So all you have to do is tap into that and pull all that information down within us. And when you're in your heart space and you're feeling this divine love and you're pulling this into your heart space, you can just begin to trust it, because your heart will guide you and be like, hell yes, this is good, this is right, this is this. Or you might get like this icky, uncomfortable thing and going, oh, something doesn't feel good here. And I'm not talking like something's wrong with the person, but maybe the energy you're tapped into isn't of the highest good. And we'll probably talk a little bit deeper about that on another podcast, to using your discernment to understand these energies. Because I think that'd be a podcast of like how you can like test to see what's true to you. And I'll give you some information about what's true to me. But I think that's good enough to end right there. I don't want to bog down and get too much into this. I just wanted to kind of give you a general overview of like how I work with it energetically. So just to kind of like go over things and do a little review before we end. You can use this for your own self, to tap into your own higher self. You can learn how to do this to help guide you, because we have these spiritual support teams around us, but we have free will. So unless we ask for help, they can't help us. So you have to ask for help. So when you do that, you ask for help, you allow this to come through for yourself, and it can help you in everyday things to do, your job, your life, everything that you do, right? You can use these tools to help you in everyday life. And then if you are doing some healing work or any type of healing work, working with people to help guide them, if you're a coach of any time, tuning into your psychic senses will help guide you through these things. So I kind of told you how I do it with my energy healing. I probably left a few things out, but I didn't want to get too overly complicated either in what I'm telling you, and wanted to make it so it was a little bit not so make it so it was clear so we could all understand, because sometimes I could get a little out of the box and kind of go a little bit deeper and then might lose somebody. And I really want you all to realize that these are things that you can start doing to help you in everyday life. So I was going to do a podcast about telepathy, but maybe the next podcast is about how you can tune into these a little bit more, to give you some tools so you can help. But start with meditation, start opening up your heart. Those are great places to start. And if you do ever want to go in and start channeling and doing some mediumship work, these are good tools to know, and that you can do these with opening your own spiritual practice or a holistic practice, or really it helps you with anything. It can help you write your book that you're trying to write, whatever it is, write your screenplay, write a song. You can tune into this information and allow it to flow freely through you, so it's not as challenging as trying to think about it. Kind of like I started with this podcast. It just channeled right through me, and here I am now talking about it, almost exactly what the information they gave me to channel to you all. So let's go over it. You have your clear feeling, and that's feeling not just people's feelings, but feeling the energy, the subtle energies in the room, with people, with animals, with objects, things like that. Also feeling somebody else's feelings. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but a lot of times I can feel people's pain. I know I've mentioned it before in other podcasts. I can feel other people's pain in my body. So I could feel like if somebody's having back pain or stomach pain or that. Mostly I tune it in now only when I'm working with somebody, because I don't want to walk around feeling everybody else's pain, because then I feel like they're mine, and we don't want that. And then there's clear knowing. So when you know something is true, when you have to ask a question, when you know that you should go right instead of left, even if it's not logical, you just know. This is taking logic out, and you just know. You know that it's time to move on from a client. You know it's time to start working with a life coach. You know it's time to shift your diet. And sometimes this knowing just happens without you even realizing it. So if you ever like all of a sudden go and all of a sudden you realize, wow, I'm eating different. I didn't say I'm going to go on the diet. I didn't say that I was going to, start eating healthy. But all of a sudden, you knew you'd go to the grocery store, you pick up things, you didn't even realize it, you start eating. Your body was telling you and you knew it was time to make a shift. That is part of the knowing. It's amazing. Like, I could just really go on and on and on about this topic, if you can tell. And then we have the clear hearing, where you hear which sounds like your voice, and it's not your thoughts. It's not something you have to really work. It's not something you have to work for. It just kind of like comes to you. And this could be information about yourself. It could be in meditation. That's why some people get frustrated in meditation, because they think they hear thoughts and they're like, oh, I can't clear my mind. Well, you did clear your mind, because now you're getting channeled information that is your guidance that's going to help you. So there's that. There's also receiving songs and lines of stories or whatever to help you. That's all part of clairaudio, and sometimes you hear it outside of your voice, or it's tuning into a frequency, a subtle pitch, a high-pitched noise, a constant humming. Those are also ways for your clairaudio to work. And then you have your clairvoyancy, which is about clear seeing, and you see scenes, you see objects, you see colors, all those beautiful things. You can visualize what something looks like, and you see the whole picture in your mind's eye. Or maybe you're shown movie clips and you see them like you're watching a television, or maybe it's a little fuzzy television. It's not always so clear. Just different things like that. There's something else that came to me as I was doing that, and I don't remember, so hold about a minute. I'm just going to give a total recall and see what that information is. So I'm also being reminded for you guys to be gentle and patient with yourself as you move through these, and allow these things to develop, and you work on strengthening and developing. And a lot of that is about things that I've talked about before. You can go back about bringing in more love, living in your heart space, raising your vibration. Listen to some of those podcasts about forgiveness and releasing judgment and letting go, things like that. All those things are going to help you tune in better and have a clearer understanding of what is coming through. I guess that's it. I guess that's all I have to offer for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you have any questions, or if there's maybe a topic that you want me to talk about or get clear about, just send me an email. Address to Valerie at intuitivehearthealer@gmail.com. You'll find me on Instagram and Twitter at Intuitive Heart Healer, and Facebook Intuitive Heart Healer Group. And be sure to jump over to my website, intuitivehearthealer.com, and take a look at all my merchandise I have there and book a session, because I would love to work with you and help you release some of this energy that you got going on, or help you understand a little bit more about what the energy is about. And thank you very much, everybody. And I'm talking to my spirits guides right here and now, because the information they said is to remind everybody that this is not about telling you your future. Okay, this is not about telling you your future. This is about your energy that is now, and the energy that's available to you at this moment. And a lot of the times when I'm working with energy healing, it's about past stuff that we're releasing so that we can move forward. So they wanted me to add that to this as well. So have a great week, everybody. Go out and spread some love in this world. I am sending all my love to all of you. Till next time, bye-bye for now.